The rain battered the windows of the old diner, a relentless drumbeat that matched the pounding in my chest. I was 25, sitting across from a man my mother swore was my future, and I couldn't stop staring at the way his hands trembled around his coffee mug. This was the moment I'd been dreading, the one where love was supposed to spark, but all I felt was a storm brewing inside me. My name is Ethan Carter, born and raised in the sleepy town of Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, where everyone knew your business before you did. Mom had spent months orchestrating this blind date, convinced that James Harper, the golden boy of our small community, was the answer to my lonely heart. James was everything she dreamed of for me: charming, successful, a lawyer with a smile that could light up a courtroom. He was 26, with neatly combed blonde hair and eyes like a summer sky, the kind of guy who looked like he stepped out of a magazine. But as he sat there, fidgeting, his perfection cracked just enough for me to notice something deeper, something Mom hadn't warned me about. "Ethan, your mom says you're a writer," James said, his voice steady despite the nervous twitch in his fingers. "What do you write about?" I leaned back, trying to shake off the weight of Mom's expectations. Stories. People. The things we hide from the world. I didn't mean for it to sound so pointed, but his eyes flickered, like I'd struck a nerve. He laughed softly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Sounds like you see right through people." "Not always," I admitted, studying him. "But I'm trying to figure you out." The diner smelled of greasy fries and burnt coffee, the kind of place where secrets lingered in the air. James was polite, attentive, asking all the right questions about my life, me job at the local bookstore, my dream of publishing a novel, my obsession with old vinyl records. But every time the conversation veered toward him, he deflected with a smile or a joke. It was infuriatingly charming, and I hated how much I wanted to know more. Mom had been relentless about this match. "Ethan, you're too picky," she'd said, her voice sharp with worry. "James is perfect. He's stable, kind, and he's ready to settle down. What more do you want?" She didn't understand that I wanted fire, not stability. I wanted someone who'd burn through my walls, not build new ones. But Mom was old school, raised in a world where love was a checklist, not a feeling. And in Willow Creek, being openly gay still raised eyebrows. So she was desperate for me to find someone respectable to quiet the whispers. James excused himself to the restroom, and I watched him go, noticing the slight slump in his shoulders. Something about him felt fragile. Not weak, but like he was carrying a weight he didn't want anyone to see. I sipped my coffee, wondering why a guy like him, successful, handsome, the whole package seemed so uneasy. When he returned, his eyes were red-rimmed, just for a moment, before he flashed that perfect smile again. "Sorry, allergies," he said quickly, but I wasn't buying it. I'd seen enough tears in my life to know the difference between pollen and pain. "James," I said, leaning forward, "you don't have to pretend with me." He froze, his fingers tightening around his mug. For a second, I thought he'd bolt. But then he looked at me, really looked at me, and something shifted. "You're not what I expected," he said quietly. "Neither are you," I replied, my heart racing. "But I'm starting to think that's a good thing." The rain outside slowed to a drizzle, and the diner felt smaller, like the world was just the two of us. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the spark, the one that would set my carefully planned life ablaze. As we left the diner, James hesitated at the door, his hand brushing mine. It was brief, accidental, but it sent a jolt through me. "Can I see you again?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, unable to speak. Mom had chosen him for all the wrong reasons, but my heart was already choosing him for reasons I couldn't yet name. The next week passed in a blur of texts and stolen glances. James and I met again, this time at a quiet park on the edge of town, where the willow trees swayed like they were keeping our secrets. I couldn't shake the image of his red-rimmed eyes from the diner, and I was determined to understand why a man who seemed so perfect could carry such quiet sorrow. We sat on a bench by the lake, the water reflecting the golden hues of late afternoon. James was different here, less guarded. He wore a soft gray sweater that made his blue eyes stand out, and his laughter came easier as we tossed breadcrumbs to the ducks. "You're good at this," he said, nodding toward the flock of birds fighting over my terrible aim. "Hardly," I laughed. "I'm just trying not to hit them in the head." He grinned, and for a moment, I saw the man Mom had raved about, the one who could charm anyone. But then his smile faltered, and he looked out at the water, his jaw tightening. I wanted to ask about the tears, about the weight he carried, but something told me to wait. Instead, I told him about my childhood, growing up in Willow Creek with a mom who loved me fiercely but didn't always understand me. "She means well," I said, "but she thinks love is something you can plan, like a grocery list." James nodded, his eyes distant. "My parents were like that too. Always had a vision for my life. Law school, big house, perfect husband." He paused, his voice catching. "They didn't expect me to deviate." The word hung between us, heavy with meaning. I knew what it was like to deviate in a town like this, where being gay was tolerated but not celebrated. "What happened when you did?" I asked gently. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up a pebble and skipped it across the lake, watching the ripples spread. Let's just say they're still waiting for me to fix myself. My chest tightened. I wanted to reach for his hand, to tell him he didn't need fixing, but I barely knew him. Still, the urge to protect him was overwhelming, like a fire I couldn't put out. We walked along the lake path, our shoulders brushing occasionally. He told me about his job at a law firm in Pittsburgh, how he loved the work but hated the pressure to be perfect. I shared my dream of writing a novel, one that would capture the messiness of love and identity. "I want to write something real," I said, "something that makes people feel seen." He stopped walking, turning to face me. "You already make people feel seen, Ethan." The air between us crackled, and for a moment, I thought he might kiss me. But then he stepped back, his expression guarded again. "I should go," he said abruptly. "Early meeting tomorrow." I watched him walk away, his silhouette fading into the dusk. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "How's it going with James?" "He's perfect, right?" I didn't reply. Perfect wasn't the word I'd use. Complicated, maybe. Magnetic, definitely. And I was already in too deep to turn back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words, his hesitations, the way his eyes held a story he wasn't ready to tell. I knew I was falling for him, but I also knew he was hiding something that could break us before we even began. By our third date, I was hooked, and it terrified me. James suggested a hike in the Allegheny National Forest, a place where the trees stretched endlessly and the world felt far away. We met at dawn, the air crisp and the sky painted in shades of pink. He wore a faded denim jacket, his blonde hair catching the early light, and I couldn't stop staring at how effortlessly beautiful he was. "You're quiet today," he said as we climbed a rocky trail, his breath visible in the cold. "Just thinking," I replied, my boots crunching on the gravel, "about how I didn't expect to like you this much." He laughed, a real laugh this time, and it warmed me more than the rising sun. "Careful, Ethan. You'll make me blush." But as we reached a clearing with a view of the rolling hills, his mood shifted again. He sat on a boulder, his hands clasped tightly, and I saw the same shadow that had crossed his face in the diner. This time, I couldn't let it go. James, what's wrong? I asked, sitting beside him. And don't say allergies. He looked away, his jaw working. For a long moment, he was silent, and I thought I'd pushed too far. Then he spoke, his voice low. I'm not who your mom thinks I am. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? He took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the horizon. I'm not out, Ethan. Not to my family, not to most of my friends. They think I'm straight. Or at least, they want to believe I am. The words hit me like a punch. I'd grown up fighting for my place in this world, coming out to mom at 16, enduring the whispers and the stares. The idea that James, this man I was falling for, was still hiding it hurt in a way I couldn't explain. Why? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. You're 26. You're successful. Why keep pretending? He flinched, and I immediately regretted my tone. It's not that simple, he said. My parents, they're religious. Old school. If I come out, I lose them. And I've already lost so much. There it was, the crack in his perfection, the source of his tears. I wanted to be angry, to tell him to be brave, but the pain in his eyes stopped me. Instead, I reached for his hand, and this time, he didn't pull away. I'm sorry, I said softly. I didn't know. He squeezed my hand, his touch warm and grounding. I want to be honest with you, Ethan. I like you. More than I should. Maybe. But I'm scared. I nodded, my heart aching for him. We'll figure it out, I said, not knowing if it was true but wanting to believe it. The hike back was quieter, but his hand stayed in mine, and that small gesture felt like a promise. I knew this was only the beginning of our challenges, but for the first time, I felt like we were in it together. Weeks turned into months, and James became a constant in my life. We stole moments whenever we could: coffee dates, late-night drives, quiet evenings at my apartment listening to records. Each time, I saw more of the real him, the way he laughed at my terrible puns, the way his eyes lit up when he talked about his pro bono work for kids in foster care. But I also saw the fear that lingered, the way he tensed when his phone buzzed with a call from his parents. Mom was thrilled, of course. See, Ethan, I told you he's perfect, she'd say, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath his surface. I didn't tell her about his secret, partly because it wasn't mine to share, partly because I didn't want her to ruin what we were building. One night, we were at my place, sprawled on the couch with a half-empty pizza box between us. James was quieter than usual, his fingers tracing patterns on my arm. What's on your mind? I asked, nudging him. He hesitated, then sat up, his expression serious. I told my sister about us. My heart skipped a beat. And she was okay with it. Surprised, but okay. He smiled faintly. She wants to meet you. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. What about your parents? I asked. His smile faded. I'm not ready for that. Not yet. I wanted to push, to ask when he'd be ready, but I could see the fear in his eyes. Instead, I pulled him close, letting him rest his head against my chest. One step at a time, I said, kissing the top of his head. But the steps weren't always forward. A week later, James canceled our plans last minute, saying he had to visit his parents in Ohio. When he returned, he was distant, his smiles forced. I pressed him, and he admitted his parents had set him up on a date with a woman. They think it's time I settled down, he said bitterly. They don't know about you. They don't know about me. Anger flared in my chest, not at him, but at the world that made him feel like he had to hide. You don't have to go along with it, I said. You can tell them the truth. He shook his head, tears welling up. You don't get it, Ethan. If I lose them, I have nothing. You have me, I said, my voice breaking. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine, and for a moment, I thought he'd break down completely. But then he kissed me, fierce and desperate, like he was trying to hold on to something real. I kissed him back, pouring every ounce of my heart into it, hoping it was enough to keep him from slipping away. The tension between us grew as summer faded into fall. James was trying, God. He was trying, but the weight of his secret was tearing him apart. I saw it in the way he'd check his phone obsessively, in the way he'd flinch at the mention of his parents. I wanted to be his anchor, but I was starting to feel like I was drowning too. We went to Pittsburgh for a weekend, a chance to escape Willow Creek and its prying eyes. The city felt like a different world, vibrant, anonymous, where we could hold hands without looking over our shoulders. We wandered through the Strip District, sharing street food and laughing like we didn't have a care in the world. For a moment, I thought we could outrun his fears. But that night, in our hotel room, everything unraveled. James got a call from his father, and I watched his face crumple as he listened. When he hung up, he sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. They want me to come home for Thanksgiving, he said, and they want me to bring someone. A girlfriend. I felt like I'd been slapped. What did you say? I told them I'm not dating anyone, he said, his voice hollow. But they keep pushing. They think I'm just focused on my career. I sat beside him, my heart pounding. James, you can't keep doing this. You're tearing yourself apart. He looked at me, his eyes wet with unshed tears. I know, but I don't know how to stop. I took his face in my hands, forcing him to meet my gaze. You're enough, James, just as you are. You don't have to be what they want. He leaned into my touch, his breath shaky. I want to believe that. I want to be with you, Ethan. But I'm so scared of losing everything. I kissed him then, soft and slow, trying to pour all my strength into him. You won't lose me, I whispered. No matter what. But as we lay there in the dark, his head on my chest, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on borrowed time. His parents were a shadow over us, and I didn't know if love was enough to keep them at bay. Thanksgiving loomed like a storm cloud. James decided to go home alone, promising he'd tell his parents about us soon. I stayed in Willow Creek, helping Mom with her annual community dinner at the church. She was in her element, bustling around with trays of turkey and pie, but I could barely focus. All I could think about was James, sitting at his parents' table, pretending to be someone he wasn't. I texted him late that night, after the dishes were done and Mom was asleep. How's it going? I wrote, trying to keep it light. His reply came hours later. It's hard. I miss you. I stared at the screen, my heart aching. I wanted to drive to Ohio, to pull him out of that house and bring him back to me. But I knew he had to face this on his own. The next day, he called me, his voice shaking. They set me up again, he said. Some girl from their church. I couldn't say no without explaining. Anger surged through me, but I kept my voice calm. You don't have to do this, James. You can tell them about us. I know, he said, and I could hear the tears in his voice. I'm trying. I promise. When he came back to Willow Creek, he was a wreck. We met at my apartment, and he collapsed into my arms, sobbing. I hate this, he said. I hate lying to them. I hate lying to myself. I held him tightly, my own eyes burning. Then stop, I said. Be honest. For you, not for me. He looked up at me, his face streaked with tears. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You are, I said fiercely. And I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. That night, we made love for the first time, and it was raw, desperate, like we were trying to hold on to each other before the world tore us apart. Afterward, as we lay tangled in the sheets, he whispered, "I love you, Ethan." I kissed him, my heart swelling. "I love you too." But love wasn't a shield, and I knew the hardest part was still to come. Winter settled over Willow Creek, and with it came a quiet resolve. James was still scared, but he was starting to fight back. He told his sister everything, and she became our biggest ally, texting me updates when James was too overwhelmed to talk. "He's trying," she wrote. "He's just terrified of losing Mom and Dad." I understood, but it didn't make it easier. Every time James pulled away, citing work or family, I felt the distance growing. I started to wonder if I was enough, if my love could ever compete with the weight of his parents' expectations. One snowy evening, we met at the diner where it all began. The place was nearly empty, the rain replaced by soft flakes falling outside. James looked exhausted, but there was a new determination in his eyes. "I'm going to tell them," he said, his voice steady. "After Christmas. I can't keep doing this." My heart leaped, but I was cautious. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "I want to be with you, Ethan. Not just in secret. I wanted to be real." I reached across the table, taking his hand. "I'll be there," I said. "Whatever happens." Christmas came and went, and James went home again. I waited, checking my phone obsessively, dreading the worst. When he finally called, his voice was raw. "I told them," he said. They didn't take it well." My stomach sank. "What happened?" "They said I'm confused, that I need to pray about it. They want me to see a counselor." He laughed bitterly. "They think they can fix me." "James, I'm so sorry," I said, wishing I could hold him. "Don't be," he said. "I feel free. For the first time in years." I drove to Ohio the next day, meeting him at a coffee shop near his parents' house. He looked like he hadn't slept, but his eyes were brighter, like a weight had lifted. "I'm done hiding," he said. "I choose you." We kissed right there in the coffee shop, not caring who saw. It was reckless, beautiful, and for the first time, I believed we could make it. Spring brought new beginnings, but also new challenges. James moved to Willow Creek permanently, renting a small apartment near mine. His parents cut him off, financially and emotionally, but he was rebuilding, piece by piece. His sister visited often, bringing stories of their parents' slow, grudging acceptance. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Mom, to her credit, was trying too. When I told her about James's coming out, she was quiet for a long time. "I just want you to be happy," she said finally. "If he makes you happy, that's enough." He did. James wasn't perfect, not in the way Mom had meant. His tears, his fears, his imperfections, they were part of him, and I loved every piece. We spent our days building a life together, from quiet mornings over coffee to late nights dreaming about the future. One evening, as we walked by the lake where we'd had our second date, James stopped and pulled me close. "I was so scared," he said, his voice soft. "But you made me brave." "You were always brave," I said, kissing him. "You just needed someone to remind you." We stood there, the water reflecting the stars above, and I realized that love wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing someone, flaws and all, and fighting for them every day. James was my choice, tears and all, and I'd choose him again in a heartbeat. As we walked home, hand in hand, I knew we'd face more small-town gossip, family tensions, the weight of the world. But together, We were unstoppable. Mom had found me a husband, but my heart had chosen him for reasons she'd never understand. And that was more than enough.